Speakers Bank Podcast. Our voices, our views.
Hello and welcome back to the Speakers Bank Podcast. And joining me today is the Western Region Manager, Joan. How are you going today?
Good, thank you.
And how was your Easter?
It was lovely. We went away and it was a lovely Easter.
And as usual, my co-host, Catherine, how was your Easter?
That was fantastic.
That's great. Well, today we're going to be talking about the annecto side of things for people with disabilities. So, Joan, first question for you. We understand you are the Western Region Manager at annecto. What does your role entail?
Okay, so it's a Western metropolitan area that I'm manager of. So it's looking after all the services that we provide in the West. So that we have the office at Yarraville and we have the office here at Werribee. And the Western region, as you know, is growing. So for me, part of my role is making sure we grow with the region growing. So it's having the right supports for the people in the areas that are all extending.
What's sort of like the biggest issues at the moment for that region in particular?
I think well, one of them is everyone's transferring to NDIS in the Western Metropolitan Region. So that's a big change for a lot of people, especially people who've been in the sector for a long time. You know, families have been with DHHS, that's what they know, and all of a sudden they have to change. In terms of aged care, it's the requests for services are massive and there's a very long waiting list, so that's a big issue for people in the West.
Do you think that the services is really sort of like, it's like hampering on to the NDIS and that's going to create an overflow of sort of like services for that particular thing?
Look, I think it's an interesting question. NDIS is certainly changing the way things are happening. It's really a totally different way of operating. And I think for some people they'll get more supports, and which is what they're needing. I think some people unfortunately mightn't get everything they're wanting, and that's because maybe they're not prepared when they go into the plan or it's not understood by the planner. So there's some real concerns for me around how it's affecting supports.
Yes, and one of the things I want to tell the viewers who are watching this is it's not your disability in general, it's how you word it. So my advice to you is to get the best local area coordinator that can write it for you the best way they can write it. So that's the best way to get your maximum funding that you deserve. Because if you write it all happy chappy, you won't get what you deserve, and that's not something that you want.
Annecto David House seems to be one of the important services at Annecto. Please share a little bit of history.
Oh, I think it's a wonderful history, the history of David House at Yarraville. So it's come together over a number of years. It's a combination of different agencies that have come together, small agencies that couldn't survive on their own. But the very beginning of it, as you know, David House, that site was a special school for children with disabilities.
I was one of them.
You went around then? I was. But there were parents who said, I don't want my children to go to an institution because there were still Kew cottages, Sunbury, etc. And so the parents came together and said, we want our children to do something other than go to a big institution. So they joined what was called the Helping Hand Association, and people went in there. And over the years, programs have changed. There was a lot of workshop type activities operating. Right up to about 10 years ago, there was actually a wooden workshop on the site. But now it's more out in the community. So it's really, I see our role as really working with the community to assist, because our mission is to see an inclusive community. So that's what we try and do at David House now, and that's really staying true to what those original families wanted, was that their children not to be locked away in an institution but to be part of the community. So it's always very inspiring being there, and you talk to any of the parents and it really centres you and says, this is what I'm here for.
Can you share with us like a story that you've been involved with David House that really touched your heart?
Well, there's a number of them, but there was a gentleman who is still alive, and he was in Sunbury institution for 35 years. His mum wasn't well, and he was picked up and taken up to Sunbury, lived there for 35 years and hated every minute of it, had a sister and had minimal contact with her, minimal contact with his mum. then when David House got together and they had support coordinators, etc., there was a lot of work done to close down those institutions, and annecto then became involved with this particular gentleman, and he's lived on his own right up till very recently. He had his own flat in Seddon, and you know, he lived in that Sunbury cottages for 35 years, and then was able to move out and live very independently, which was really fantastic.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he got he got dementia. It was really early onset, because I guess he was late 70s. And he chose then where to move to. We weren't too sure what he wanted, and he walked into an SRS one day, a really good one in Footscray, and said, "This is where I want to live." So he's had control of his life ever since he left Sunbury, which is fantastic. And there's still people at David House who were children at the school, when it was a school, and they're still at David House, but very much part of their own community.
Yeah.
And the parents still get together, many of the older parents, and they are a leading light for all of us, and especially for our CEO, Estelle Fife. She really listens to those parents, and I think they lead her every day.
Yeah, it's good, because I had an experience at Urella, and it just didn't go too well. Like, everybody's needs were all individual, so our level is different. Like, I can, there's so many people that are independent, but at Urella we were getting treated like kids.
And I think that happened, up till fairly recently, but I think the Disability Acts over the last years have been really leading the way in the way they've operated. In the most recent Disability Act talked about being out in the community, and we were really, the services were made accountable for supporting that, and you'll see that in the services and the supports we provide.
Yep.
Now, hopefully in that the day service, the Learning and Lifestyle program, it's called Learning and Lifestyle because I'm really committed to ongoing learning for people, so we have accredited learning programs.
Yep.
And it is out in the community, so we do a lot of work with the community.
Yeah, and
I think all agencies are closing, but it's fairly recent. It's not a new, it's not been there for a long, long time. It is fairly recent, the change.
And I can see, like, when I go to David House, every now and then, I see how the participants absolutely love it, because it's like with the staff and the participants, they're like being treated equal. Like, they treat you how you want to be, and you treat them how, and everybody's happy.
I think that's a really important part of supporting people.
Yeah.
People have to be seen as equals. But everyone has something to offer.
Yeah.
And they talk a lot about diversity and all, across the board these days. And I think that includes disability as well. And it is recognising the strengths of everyone. And I think we're very fortunate. We've got some brilliant staff in the day service, the Learning and Lifestyle program, but also in the Community Options program. And they really listen to the people they support. We have a client council that meets with me every month, and they give me feedback. I put that in my monthly reports up to the board and the CEO. It's really important that everyone feels that everyone has a part to play. And I think annecto's vision is around interdependence. Their principles, purpose and principles. It is around that interdependence, that we all have to work together, and we have to be authentic in doing it.
So Joan, you just touched on some of the programs that David House provides. Could you go into that a bit more in detail?
Yeah, so in the, I'll start with the Learning and Lifestyle program, the day service, where there's about 126 people that attend. So they come and go each day. When I could walk through that site where you said you visited and not see anyone some days because they're all out in the community. A number of the people we support are on one-to-one supports, and they were not in the community earlier on, but now we've got such good staff that they've worked so well with the people that they're able to go out and the people feel confident being in the community. So that's just sometimes just walking around, going to parks. It's a variety of things. Other things we do is go to swimming pools, and we're in the league bowling competition. We play in a basketball competition. We go to the Jamie Oliver cooking classes.
A lot of fierce competition.
Yeah, we go sailing. So we try and give people choices. Because when we talk about informed choice, I don't think it's always informed for people with disability, it's just what they know. So we try and really extend people and say, try this. And if you don't like it, that's fine, but at least it's an informed decision then. So we really have a large variety of programs and activities where people can say, that's what I like. I don't like that so much, but I really like this program.
Is there a particular program that you always remember that you're like, yeah, I love this program?
Jamie Oliver was pretty good. I went down there one day, that was pretty good. I think sailing is a fantastic program. I really like that. There's a fishing program. Then there's the accredited learning. I do like the accredited learning programs. I think they're, that is something that a person can hang up their certificate on the wall next to their brothers and sisters.
Yes, I know the feeling of that because we did something very similar to that. We had to do a course where we would have to try to teach a class on our disability, and Speakers Bank and annecto gave us the opportunity to do that. And now Catherine and I are qualified to do that, so we're very thankful.
I think it's really important to do that and to say I can achieve just like my brothers and sisters and my mum and dad, because everyone who gets a certificate, they hang them up on the wall,
Exactly.
in the hallway or in the bedroom, and I think it's really important everyone has that opportunity.
Who are the other stakeholders at annecto David House?
So to make it work in the community, we need a large range of partners. So we have partnerships with the universities, we have partnerships with registered training organisations. Deakin University is a really close partner. We have a wonderful partnership with RMIT, they're doing training of all our staff. We also partner really well with a lot of community organisations. So a lot of the sporting centres, we're really close partners with them. It's a wide range of partners. We consider that as essential to be able to meet our vision, which is to realise an inclusive community. A lot of the shops, it doesn't sound really important, but we have really good relationships with a lot of the local shops. So the guys we support can go in, and I'll often go coffee with someone, and they go up and they chat away. Because often when a person with a disability goes into the shop owner will talk to the worker. Whereas I go in and they forget about me, they just talk to the person, that I go with, and it's really good. And then you notice members of the community watching that. So there's a very wide range of partners.
Yeah, and it just goes to show that stakeholders are just as much as important as the actual people working behind the scenes.
We have a real commitment to the universities and the registered training organisations. I think I have a responsibility to make sure that the next lot of workers come out really know what they're doing and come out being able to advocate for the people they're going to be working with. So we put a lot of time into taking students. We have a lot of students from a variety of courses.
Is there a particular process that you use to?
Well, I have partnerships, so I have the OT students from Deakin, and that's a wonderful relationship, and some of them have been employed. We sit with some of the psychology students from Deakin, and I have input into the board, the advisory board there, the same with a number of the RTOs and TAFEs too. So it is around having a variety of students coming in so that an OT goes out knowing who they're going to be writing a report for.
Yeah.
A speech therapist knows who they're going to write a report for, because it's no good going off and writing a report if you don't know the setting.
Absolutely.
So I think that is a real obligation of ours to provide that information.
So at David House, you get speech therapists for some clients.
We are working on the speech therapy. The main ones at the moment are OTs and psychologists, and then the dual diploma people from community development, community welfare, etc. Speech therapists will come in and do a visit, but at the moment they're not doing placements because I don't have a speech therapist on placement, but they do come in and visit.
So you also provide a lot of management for Speakers Bank. Could you offer us some insights around the early beginnings of Speakers Bank?
Yeah, I think Speakers Bank is what annecto's about. I think it's around an inclusive community. So many, many years ago, there was a lady called Helen Adams who ran, it was called Western Region Disability Network, and it would be 12, 13 years ago, and she started off Speakers Bank, and it had a few stops and starts, And then, so Helen took it to a certain stage, then she left and her manager Singh came in and he really moved ahead with Speakers Bank. And then Mimi came in too and has taken it even further. I think the reason I'm so in favour of the work done by members of Speakers Bank is that it's people, it's like a self-advocacy, but also a systemic advocacy. I think it's really powerful when the person who is doing the advocacy actually can speak from a personal viewpoint, because your story is much more powerful.
Yes.
And so I think the impact is much, much greater. And I have a vision that in the future it will become even more powerful than it already is.
Yes, because I think society is slowly recognising people with disabilities a lot more with the NDIS coming through,
Yes.
with all the government policies that are putting in place,
Yeah.
and all the other stuff that's
It's
going
been quite a political point, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has.
This
It really
recent
has.
election, it's been discussed
really
a lot.
has,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think it's fantastic. And even though it's about not enough funding or some of the problems, at least it's out there.
Yeah.
It's been talked about, and I think if you can keep it out there and be talked
Because
about.
I think you and I would both agree that previously disability issues would be swept under the carpet, but
Yes.
now because it's become more of a society out there, it's becoming more of a election type issue
Yes.
now, which is fantastic. 'Cause
Yeah,
I saw the ad. I didn't really understand it, but it was to do with Scott Morris, the Prime Minister, that something to do with disability. He wants to stop this, so they're saying no. If you're going to do this, then you've got to go.
Are you talking about how people with disabilities are being treated at a particular like housing, sort of that Royal Commission?
Oh, yes.
In that sort
See,
of-
that's the other thing that
that's
really
the other
goes
thing,
in
yes.
my part.
Yes.
There has been, Catherine, a few conversations about disability, and Scott Morrison's become involved in. One was that a lady didn't move house. She had a disability and the house was modified, and some member of Parliament said, oh, she should have moved regions, and without understanding what the whole issue was about. And Scott Morrison said no, he stood up for the lady. But I think it's just the fact that it's there, and with the Royal Commission too, I think
Yes.
it is really good. I think it's also linked to the whole movement of looking at diversity. It's not just disability, it's about anyone who is not a mainstream person.
Yeah.
And I think all together, it's a very powerful movement. Before it was a very small movement, now I think it's quite a large movement.
It's a very large movement.
Yeah, and I think that's what we concentrate on and say, hang on, this isn't just about me, it's about everyone who isn't accepted into the mainstream community. It's a good time, I think.
Yeah. What sort of changes or growth have you seen happening at David House or Speakers Bank?
Oh, Speakers Bank's really grown. I think the thought that we're looking at social enterprise and micro businesses is really a big step forward.
It is.
So
It's a
meeting
massive
with
step.
everyone, I know, it's really quite exciting, I
It is
think.
exciting too.
And I think it is the fact that we're running small businesses and giving people the opportunity to work more at David House has been fantastic. It's also around, so we had a program where people were given the opportunity to live in their own house. Some have bought houses, but they're just living in private rental. So it's a different way of supporting a person now. I think the attitude has changed, that you don't have to be. It's not led by the service provider. It's led now by the person with the disability. And I think that's a big change. I think there's still a long way to go on it, but it's really, I can feel the momentum.
Yeah,
I think it is moving.
Yeah, I think the NDIS has become like a bit of a driver for that sort of independence.
Yes.
It's sort of like, we will help you fund your supports, but then it's up to you to do it yourself as well. So it's
Yes.
50-50.
Which has created some challenges for service providers and for everyone, because I think most people with disability are used to the service doing all the coordination, whereas NDIS is saying, no, we'll give you the support workers, but you're able to decide yourself. And I think that's a massive step forward, because that's a change of thinking.
And I think
It's a
it's
change of
I think it's a
direction.
massive change for people with special needs too, because they need to learn that independence is very, very important, because there's someone out in the community that just think that I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, but you can do this. You just need education and learning
Yes.
on how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think NDIS is paving the way for that sort of stuff. So I think it's a great way.
It's a change for both the service provider but also the person receiving the support, isn't it?
Yes.
They're both having to take this journey together.
Mm.
And
there's
work
learning for
together.
both and work together.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic journey.
So what do you see David House moving into the future?
Well, I think I often ponder that at night on my sleepless nights. I think, where will it go? At the moment, still we have the buses coming in. I think in the future that more people will be out in the community and not coming into the centre, and I think be a much smaller number coming into the community for special purposes, and then the other days they'll be out in the community. I think some of this will involve working with families really closely too, and seeing how do we get, instead of maybe the bus always coming, how can you get to the local community centre or to the swimming pool? So are there, can the family drive? Are there other ways of getting the person there? I think there'll be a total change. in the way
So
of
creating
thinking.
more independence again.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. But I think it will be a journey that has many humps in the road and lots of roundabouts. But I think it will get there because I've seen so many changes over the years.
I can definitely see from the outside that David House could be sort of like an advisor to people who need NDIS and what they need to do to get it. Like there could be local coordinators in that area that could help these people at David House to get more NDIS funding and stuff like that. Or even do programs or educational sort of like sessions of how to understand what the NDIS is.
Yes, I totally agree, and I think that is part of the vision from the organisation, for the senior people in the organisation, for that to happen there. So it is a resource, but just a different type of programs to what's happening now. And I have seen the change over the years, and I think they're getting there, but it's the next step.
Yeah.
The next hump is probably a big hump.
Yeah.
But
And it's the most scariest hump too.
It can be for some people, yeah, that's right. I think a range of people that can be, quite scary, yeah. Exciting though.
How relevant would you consider Speakers Bank in the disability space in the future?
Oh, I'm quite passionate about this. I think I see Speakers Bank having a massive role. I see Speakers Bank as becoming a leader of debates. That I would like to see Speakers Bank pick up on a lot of the issues that are around, from the Royal Commission, from general conversations, and lead some of those conversations. I would love that to happen, either through blogs or podcasts or whatever. But I see Speakers Bank has an absolutely critical role in the change of things happening. So it's how we actually get there is what Mimi will be working with all of you to do. But I see it's the best time for Speakers Bank to be around.
It really is, because I feel like there's this massive chain of movement coming through. It's been small, but it's gradually rising and rising. And now's the time to strike while the iron is hot. And I totally agree with what you're saying. But also agree that Speakers Bank could be more than just like a volunteer. It could be helping people with special needs go out into their own communities and to get their own work, and at the same time be volunteer advocacy workers at the same time. So they can do two roles.
Yeah, and that's it. See, I think there'll be leaders like you who will really be taking it on. I have a vision for where it can go, but then I think you guys have a fantastic vision of where it can go and how to get there. But I do see you as becoming leaders in the disability sector in Victoria and just leading debates and taking control of something.
And knowing how to talk about it as well. Because if you, for an example, if I went to someone I don't know, never met, they're very kind, very friendly, and I said, I struggle with this because, or whatever, never, no, that's not how it works. I said, I've got a learning disability, and they might say to you, you don't look like you've got a disability. And I'm like, well, you don't see it, and it's like you don't know how you talk about it.
Yeah, and that's also because they're not educated in on how to talk about it.
I think that's right, yeah.
And Speakers Bank does provide that opportunity to get that education that they need. I was talking to a couple of able-bodied people today, and they said that you've changed my ways of disability. Like, we don't realise how fortunate we are as able-bodied people to have more opportunity, and yet we are sometimes lazy and we take it for granted. But seeing you do that presentation the other day made me realise that I need to take the opportunities more often, because I could end up having a disability, and I will regret not taking those opportunities when I was able-bodied, when I had the chance to.
Wow.
So that's a very powerful message.
Because I've been good, like, I have a mild learning disability, so I struggle with answering questions or whatever, and people in my shoes, it's always good. And I just tell them, you just need to read out the questions for me so I can understand, because my brain isn't processing it properly. Yeah. So
But
that's
interestingly, I think everyone has their own issues.
Exactly.
And no one talks about our issues.
No.
No, it's always hidden.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
a way for people to learn.
Mm.
Like, yeah.
But I think it is the time. It's, because it's all about diversity, all the conversations now. So I think this is the time to really, for Speakers Bank to really blossom and just grow and just take a leadership role.
Well, speaking on growing and blossoming, is there any other additional messages you'd like to share to our viewers about the disability space?
I think advocacy is still really important. I think we always need advocacy. I think it requires braveness on the part of organisations, but also on the part of families and for people with disabilities. And so for that to happen, we all have to come together and work closely together. So it's bringing all parts of the community together. I think that's how I feel it will happen. Because if we still have little pockets, it's just that much more difficult. But I think the climate's right for it at the moment. So I think it's a good time to be here. And as we were saying earlier, the debates are there in this current election.
Just got to activate it.
Yeah, and take advantage of it. Just take advantage of those debates that are going on and really run with them and speak publicly about it.
What's really pleasing me is that people with disabilities are speaking about their problems. They are talking about what's happening in their lives, rather than letting others talk about it, you know what I mean?
I think that's a good point. You see that in football, in sport at the moment, with people talking about some of their mental health issues. So people are speaking about it, and I think it's just more and more.
Yeah.
It's leaders coming up
That's
and
right.
taking that spot and saying, this is it, I can talk about this.
Well, with that, I'd like to finish our podcast. Thank you, Joan, for joining. And as always, Catherine, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.